I've arrived at the next book in my read-through of the Oxford Mark Twain, the 29-volume set that I'm going through. I think I'm on book 6 or 7. The book is A Tramp Abroad, and this is another large travel book, much like The Innocents Abroad or Roughing It. And this one's a little different, though. It's still very lengthy. It's about 600 pages, and it has him going to Europe. The pretense is that he's going for a walk through Europe with his friend or his agent Harris, but the reality is a bit different. I guess at the time, his last book was Tom Sawyer, and unlike what happened in the 20th century, Tom Sawyer, when it was initially released, was actually quite a failure. He was really disappointed by how it was marketed and how it sold. So he decided to do another travel book to kind of match the success that he found with The Innocents Abroad, which is his first real success, and I think maybe his most successful book in the 19th century. So he did this book, which is A Tramp Abroad. And the idea is that he would go for a walk, hiking, etc., through Germany, Italy, France, a little, and just document what he sees with his wry observations and the Mark Twain way that he is known to do. The reality behind this book was a little different. He actually went with not just his friend, Agent Harris, who was actually based on a different person. He went with his wife, his 2 daughters, and I think some servants. So it was not the trip that he depicted in this book. This book really is a combination of fact and fiction. And it's the amount of walking is very limited. That's kind of a running joke, is that he'll go out of his way to avoid actually walking or hiking. And this is like the first 100 pages of this book are in a German town, and they don't do any walking. So it's a lot of grumbling, a lot of observations about European people, customs, things like that. It is, I don't know. I don't know if I like this book or not. I feel like the content was very flimsy and almost weak. There wasn't much happening, and that happened in Innocents Abroad, but there wasn't really even a tour, as in that book, that drove the narrative along. This is just Mark Twain rambling, and the way it begins and the way it ends is very strange. He doesn't even have much preamble. It's just like barely a paragraph of like, hey, I decided to go to Europe and do a walk, and then he just launches into talking about German students and this town, and it's very, just begins. And if you're looking for a strong narrative focus, I think this is not the book for you. It's a shaggy dog tale of rambling digressions and just very little characterization, just whatever Mark Twain throws in to pad this book out to make it 600 pages. There's an appendix with all these rather trivial details, and if this isn't your thing, then don't read this book. However, I would say at this point in Mark Twain's career, his ability to write, his ability to ramble and put sentences together, even when he's talking about the most boring and mundane things, he's still kind of interesting. I don't know, it's not a book that you're gonna flip through rapidly. It's just like, it'd be a good book to travel with maybe, or a book to read before bed to put you to sleep, because it's just, I didn't really expect anything from each chapter or want anything. It was just, I enjoy his prose and the way that he writes. He has reached a new level of good writing at this point in his career. I think Tom Sawyer is the only essential book that I've read in his oeuvre at this point, but I still enjoy this book, and he clearly has the potential to do something else. He was building up to what people regard as his masterpiece, Huckleberry Finn, but it would be several years, and he still had a few things to work out. The next book after that, this is The Prince and the Pauper, which I've read before, and it's a good book. I like it. I wouldn't say it's as strong as Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn, but my memories of that are that he did find his form finally in the novel, and that I think he has a few more travel, personal narrative books in him, Life on the Mississippi, Following the Equator, and his autobiography. But for the most part, I think he's starting to realize that if he wants to create a compelling tale, he needs to put it in some larger form of the novel, which I think is his great strength. So I'm looking forward to that. But I did enjoy this book for some reason. It didn't feel like 600 pages. It felt, I don't know, I liked to read it. It was just very enjoyable. Nothing happens much. People fall off mountains, and there's a lot of reminiscences about things that are going on in Switzerland, the mountains, or wherever he's traveling. It's very vague. Like, I didn't even know a lot of the time where he was, and I didn't really care. It's just, I like to hear him digress about whatever he writes about. And I like how he structures his narrative voice. It's very humble, but also very witty when it needs to be. So there's moments of tragedy, there's moments of comedy, plenty of comedy. I don't think it's laugh out loud comedy, and there's plenty of paragraphs where there's no humor at all. But he's just Mark Twain. At this point in his career, you just want to read him. So I'm hoping that from here on out, the books remain high quality. Before this, they were off and on. There were short stories that were more or less trivial, but I'm looking forward to future books in this series. Finally, I'll comment on the illustrations for this book. I almost forgot. They're not really essential. They don't offer much. They're pictures, for the most part, of landscapes where he's traveling, mountains. They all look kind of the same. And they don't offer the characterization that I wanted. There are a few times when Mark Twain is shown as a character, but I think it could have been played up even more. So I wouldn't say these pictures are as important as in other books like The Innocents Abroad or Tom Sawyer. That being said, I'm glad they're there. I feel without them, they're like a comic book. This is really an interplay of text and image that you don't get with just prose. So I'm glad they're there, even though they're not spectacular. There's like 200 or 300 of them, and they offer a compass to guide you through the book and help you see where you're at more visually.